Today, the Texas legislature is opening a new special session, and at Governor Greg Abbott's direction, they will only consider four issues. At the top of the list is a plan to subsidize private schools with taxpayer dollars at the expense of rural public schools. This plan is to require tax money to be used to fund education savings accounts. ESAs work by using taxes to give parents money designed to be used to pay for things like private school tuition. This is being sold to Texans as a solution to many reasonable concerns people have about the state of public education in our state. And there's no doubt about it, ESAs do have excellent branding, in no small part thanks to well-funded organizations out of Austin. I'm sure they have a lot of fun at their $250 a ticket country club cocktail parties. But unfortunately, it looks like they've been having so much fun that they forgot why this kind of legislation failed back in June when a bipartisan group of legislators came together to reject any proposal that diverted tax dollars into unaccountable hands. ESAs and other subsidies for private education don't help average Texans, and there's three big reasons why. First and foremost, these programs funnel money from rural public school families into urban private schools. Here's a 2017 map of where private schools are located in the state of Texas. Notice a lot of empty space on this map? Yeah, that's because for most of the state of Texas, private schools aren't an option because they do not exist. According to Paul Von Hippel, a professor at UT Austin, out of the 1,031 non-charter school districts in Texas, 772 have no private schools at all, and 107 have just one. And 20% of Texas private students are in the two largest districts in the state, Houston and Dallas. ESA advocates say that rural communities could just use online school. If you or someone you know had to do that during COVID lockdown, you already know how much of a joke that is. The upshot here is that if you live in an area where private schools aren't an option or too small to meet the needs of an entire community, there is no choice, and ESAs are functionally just a subsidy for the cities paid for by the country. The second reason why this is a terrible idea is that giant pots of taxpayer money attract fraud and opportunism. One of the ways ESA advocates imagine their subsidy will help rural areas is by encouraging opportunistic businessmen chasing government money to set up new schools. In other states that have tried programs like this, pop-up schools set up to collect the subsidy failed at alarming rates. In Milwaukee, Wisconsin, over 25 years, 41% of new schools set up to collect voucher money failed. This kind of instability isn't good for kids, and it destroys the communities that grow up around schools. It's no surprise why this is such a poor business proposition, considering that in states with similar programs, between 70 and 80% of the kids that utilize vouchers already were in private school before vouchers came into effect. That number is as high as 90% in New Hampshire. Maybe this is because public ESA money doesn't mean private schools have to be open to the public. They can and will continue denying students for whatever reason they want, ESA or no ESA. Because private schools are not regulated like public schools and aren't subject to the same requirements, it's hard to imagine that a pop-up school conceived of and operated primarily for the purpose of collecting taxpayer money would actually be good at educating children. The final big reason we can't support bills like this is that they're part of a long-term strategy by some in the state to defund public schools in favor of private education. Earlier this year, Steve Lecholop, a TEA deputy commissioner, was caught working behind the scenes trying to connect a parent with a speechwriter for Governor Greg Abbott, who was apparently looking for stories to support his campaign for a voucher program in Texas. Here's one quote where Lecholop is admitting that programs like the one being proposed this special session would defund public education.
Associated with that money, right? So school districts, what they have to do is just like be smart about like if they lose students, be smart about how they allocate the resources and right, like maybe that's one less fourth grade teacher.
For K through 12, I went to a school district called Joshua ISD. It's not perfect, nothing is, but all things considered, it's a great public school system. It's good enough that the TEA themselves gave them an A rating. It's good enough that last year I graduated a year early from one of the best public universities in the nation with honors. The parent, Mr. Lecholop, is trying to recruit on behalf of Governor Abbott, used to have a kid in Joshua ISD. Here's how Mr. Lecholop decided to frame the conversation.
And in my mind, what's a good way for you to stick it to Joshua ISD?
This is a guy who's ostensibly supposed to be working on behalf of Texas public schools, and here he is literally conspiring with the governor of Texas to try and stick it to a public school system in Texas that they themselves gave an A rating. How can we trust a program designed and supported by people who have this kind of overriding ideological commitment against public education? Rural schools and schools with small property tax bases are already struggling. Districts across the state have had to adopt deficit budgets, meaning their expenditures outweigh their revenues. Some school districts have dipped into their savings to offer teachers minimal raises, balance their budgets, or simply keep the lights on. Others are considering closing some of their campuses altogether to save money. All this, and instead of talking about reform to try and make public schools work better or paying teachers more, our government officials are literally conspiring to defund them. You want corruption? You want bad schools taking advantage of parents? You want to give up your ability to vote out the people that control your kids' education? Then by all means, support this billion-dollar handout. If you don't want to defund public schools, if you care about rural towns in Texas, if you believe that your taxpayer dollars shouldn't be redistributed to a big city private school, then I'm asking you to let your lawmakers know that you will not accept this. If you're in Texas, this tool will automatically match you with your lawmaker and give you a form letter that you can edit yourself or send immediately to your representatives in the Texas legislature. I can tell you from personal experience, since I used to be the person that read these and answered the phones for a state representative, every email, phone call, and letter makes a difference, and your representatives absolutely can be swayed by strong public opinion on contentious issues. You should also use this tool to find out who represents you so you can call them and tell them that you want education that works for all Texans, not just urban areas and parents who already have kids in private school. I'll leave the link to both of these in the comments. This is how people who don't attend $1,000 a head fundraising dinners or $250 a ticket cocktail parties influence politics, and it works, but only if we all do it together. Tell your friends that defunding public education isn't a serious solution, and tell them to ask their lawmakers to oppose any false choice legislation. Texas deserves better than this.